Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Smart Trucking Live. It's really nice to be here. I've missed you guys. It's nice to be back. Quadrajet King, glad to see you, sir. Shannon, how are you? I've been thinking about you out there in God's country. Edgar, Kelly Patterson, hey Kelly, how are you? Paul Hudson, Brandon Munn, Alan Johnson, SoCal Sandman, the famous SoCal. Yeah, SoCal, we are back. We've done some system upgrades here and taken a little time to collect our thoughts and get our brains back together. So we are back, and it's nice to be here. I'll tell you that. So, and it's kind of appropriate that with this weekend, with the AB5 that we chose this weekend, we didn't know that was going to happen, but it just a lucky coincidence. There's lots to talk about there. Skyfan, how are you, sir? Joe Skeptical. Can the driver skip the upper range of an 18-speed and just use the 9-speed unloaded on flat roads? Yeah, if you've got the motor for it, Joe. If you don't need the extra gears to pull the weight to help you get up to speed, yeah, you can drive it like a 9-speed all day long. In fact, a lot of guys just drive it like a 9-speed and then flip to the top hole once they get to highway speed. It's an easy way to do it. You don't need all those gears. Forgetful Farmer. Good day, sir. How are you? Lee Harvey. Yeah, well, Lee Harvey, we think it is. We think there our more robust system will make a big improvement on our broadcasting ability here. So here we are. Glad to be back. Skyfan 1994. Have I ever built my own truck like the Lettuce King? No, I have not. I don't have. I'm a pretty fair backyard mechanic, but I am not in the same league as the Lettuce King when it comes to that kind of skill. And he can do that not just with trucks. I wish sometime that you could see some pictures of the car that he built. It's amazing as well. But no, I don't have the skill set that he does. He is an amazing mechanic and fabricator. So just amazing news out of California here. I guess the Supreme Court made the decision Thursday night, but it wasn't released till the press until Friday morning. But they have decided that AB5 in California will stand. And I've been tuned into California all day here, and the rumblings are just starting to happen as these big carriers clue into just exactly how badly this is going to affect them. But the ramifications are huge and widespread. Of course, there's huge dissent from the ATA and the CTA and people like that, all these big carriers that have poured millions into dollars into trying not to let this pass. The ports are hugely upset because they use independent contractors, as they like to call them, in all the ports, and some of those guys just work for pennies. And you know, the ports had recently been told they were going to be forced into meeting new EPA standards, and that meant electric trucks. And the ports weren't too worried because they were going to force all these independent contractors to switch to electric trucks. Well, guess what? Now the port's got to buy the trucks and pay the drivers as the employees to drive the trucks. And I think that's a great thing, because those port guys have been getting screwed around for years. So it is a big deal. It is a big deal. So I'm happy to see it. I think it'll mean good things down the road. It'll be hugely disruptive in the meantime. There's no doubt of that. And I feel sorry for the genuine owner-operators that are leased to a good carrier, because there's lots of those guys. And some of those guys have had a great working relationship with their carriers for years, and it's been profitable for both of them. But all that really means for guys in this position now is that they have to, if they haven't already done it, and the smart guys have, gotten their own operating authority, their own insurance, and they can just pull for the carrier that way. But they're going to need another couple of customers as well, so they have a broader portfolio of customers to pull for, and that's all that's going to mean.
Take a breath.
So it's a good thing. Hey, Captain Nice Guy, hey man, how are you? Happy Canada Day, by the way. Thank you. Thank you. Happy Canada Day to you. We've got our flags on the line.
Take a breath.
The one guy, that one guy. Glad to see you, sir. John Gonzalez. Good afternoon from Bakersfield, California. I bet you it's a little warm there right now.
Are you reading that donation or not?
No, go ahead. John L. I will never drive an electric anything. Yeah, I'm kind of the same way, but I was just watching recently a drag race between a Hellcat Challenger and a Plaid Tesla, and the Plaid Tesla just blew it out of the water. So they're great as a drag car. I don't know how good a truck they'll make if they ever come to fruition, but Daniel Ford currently unloading. Well, not personally, he says, but Container Guru. Hello, it's been a while. Yes, it has been a while, Container Guru, and I'd be interested on your take on this business with AB5, because I know it's going to have a huge effect on the port guys. Huge. SoCal Sandman, I think the Lettuce King should build a spaceship and compete with Elon Musk. You never know what he's up to. He was just on tour in Illinois with truck and trailer and race car in the back, and he went to some car show down in Illinois with the whole rig, and he was into North Carolina for a truck show and up into Maine, I believe, for another one. So he's been doing the truck and car show circuit here the last couple months, and that's kind of one of his things. He really enjoys that. I'm hoping he'll join us here today, but God knows what he's doing. Hassan, how do you see what's in front of you over that long flat hood truck? We just did a video on that, a shorts on that, but as long as you don't get too low, you've got to keep your line of sight, so of course you can see out over the hood. But if you get too low, of course, that's impractical and you can't see around. But if you're at the right height and keep track of all the traffic around you, which you should be doing anyway, it's not tough at all. I sit that way because I had a back injury, and it's more comfortable for me to have my knees higher than my hips, so that's why I sit that way. But you can see everything and keep track of everything. The only part that you have difficult seeing is, of course, on any long hood truck, is right dead center in front of the truck, and that's why you've got to keep track of the traffic around you. So if something cuts under your nose, you already know it's there and back off the fuel. Alexander, I made a bet with my dispatcher, $1 about AB5 in California. I win. should have bet more than $1, but yeah, I am not a betting man, and I figured that was kind of a 50-50 bet on how that would go. But the Supreme Court and the state of California, you know that the state has got an awful lot of pull, and generally they get what they want. So, and there was a common sense side to this decision too, a practical side, because they could see all of these lease operators getting beat and ended up in court, not even making minimum wage, an awful lot of them, and that offends the Supreme Court and the state of California because they can't pay their taxes. Larry Honors, hey Dave, it's funny how they call owner-operators lease operators. Larry, that whole thing has been so twisted. All these terms have been twisted over the years, mostly by the carriers. Owner-operators used to mean that you owned your truck, you owned your trailer, you had your own authority. You owned and operated the truck and trailer. Then it became, when times got tough, some owner-operators started leasing on to bigger carriers and using their freight exclusively, and it was mutual benefit for both. That was okay. But when the rates started to fall and these bigger carriers started to take more and more, and the rates kept going up, like the insurance and the fuel, a lot of owner-operators bowed out, and the bigger carriers, the huge carriers, said, oh man, what are we going to do? And some bright boy came up with leasing trucks to the company drivers, and that's how all this lease operator business started. And it was great because they could push all the losses onto these poor lease operators. And some of those guys, a lot of those guys, went broke because of it. And the carrier would just take back the truck, lease it to the next unsuspecting sucker. And they were making, a lot of them were making more money leasing trucks to drivers than they were hauling freight, because the freight had gotten so cheap because they fought among themselves, the big carriers, that they had to do something for extra revenue. So, and these guys were working for peanuts, well below minimum wage. And there's cases all through the court system in all 50 states of this. So this is a direct result of how California has seen that and how California has chosen to correct that. And I frankly think it's a good thing, because I'm all for drivers making a middle income wage at least and not getting soaked. So,
Your chat's behind you. Need to scroll
okay, I gotta scroll up here,
down rather.
or down as the case may be. How does this impact FedEx drivers? White dog. I've never really done much studying on how FedEx operates. My understanding is that an awful lot of those trucks are leased, and they'll call themselves their own little trucking company, but truly they're just all leased to FedEx. And that model now, as far as California is concerned, is gone. So what FedEx will do is just keep those lease operators out of California for the time being, and they're going to have to put nothing but company trucks in there. That's just what they'll have to do. And a lot of big carriers certainly have the power to do that. So that'll be their workaround. But for the lease operators that were living in California, they can always move out of the state. That's a hell of a big thing to have to uproot your family just to keep your truck, but some of them will do it. Jonathan Mestro, man, how are you? Good to hear from you. Hey guys, good to have you back. Are you guys not going to have weekly streams anymore? I think we will, Jonathan. I think we're gonna try to get back into that rhythm again. So that's our plan anyway. That's our.
Acknowledge the tag there while you're on it.
And Jonathan has been a member for 16 months now, a loyal member. So. And a regular member. glad to be able to talk to you again, Jonathan. Trucker Hershey, hey man. Off until Tuesday, meeting someone for dinner. Very cool. John Gonzalez says, Bakersfield, California says, hey people. I hauled a lot of produce out of California, not so much in Bakersfield. I was usually up in Salinas, but what was the name of that truck stop that the Lettuce King hung out in a truck stop in Bakersfield, and it was just like an all-night party a lot of the time, and I'm struggling. Then it was terrible when you get old and your memory goes, but it had a wild reputation as a truck stop. Dave, do you like Smokey's being the band? Do I like Smokey and the Bandit? One of my favorite trucking movies, frankly. I was always a Burt Reynolds fan. I thought he was funny. Shannon says, can I turn up the sound? Maybe Shannon, I just need to move my big mouth closer to the microphone. That's probably the problem. You'd think with me flapping away it would pick it up, but I guess not. Lee Harvey, Bruce's, that's it, in Bakersfield, Bruce's truck stop. And it was a hell of a place at one time. Last time I was in there, it looked like they were kind of tearing it down and ripping it up and going to do something else with that land. I don't know what became of it, but that was quite the spot in its day. I like to get a night's sleep, so I would go over close to Salinas for the night and then load produce through the night or in the morning. But if you wanted to be up all night, you stayed at Bruce's, and that's what the Lettuce King would do. Stuck in Shelby, Montana right now with a 10-axle load, 8,000-pound Hitachi stove, probably superstructure until Saturday. Well, at least you're not in a baking heat there, Brandon. I imagine it's fairly cool up in Shelby, and I like Montana's it's a pretty state. So there could be worse places, man. You could be sitting in Vegas for the weekend, which to me was pure hell. But if you like to gamble, it was all right. Best movie I love is Over the Top with that very big truck, which I did get to see. Over the Top was that Sylvester Stallone? Was that the Sylvester Stallone one? God, I should know that anyway. SoCal remembers Bruce's truck stop. I haven't, I can't even remember how many years it's been since I've been down the Grapevine, and there used to be there was only a TA at the bottom, and it was all right. It had a truck wash, but it was okay. Not a whole lot of parking. And then the last time I was down there, they had a Flying J kind of in the middle there. It was but they'd put a brand new Petro down there on the west side, and it was about the last time I was down there that Petro was brand new, and that was a pleasant change. Jonathan Mestro have to run. Got to get the wheels turning, but happy to hear y'all might be coming back. Missed you guys. We missed you too, Jonathan. Thanks for the donation. Love the shorts. Kind of a new experiment for us, the shorts, but I'm enjoying doing them. So thank you for that.
And while we're doing donations, somehow we missed over Daniel Ford's. Thank you very much, Daniel, for the $20 donation. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. That was me rattling my mouth and I got carried away. So my apologies, and thank you for the donation. Captain Nice Guy, member for 18 months. And a hell of a nice guy. He earns that name. So, favorite non-trucking movie? Well, I think, believe it or not, I think my favorite might be Pirates of the Caribbean. That the first one that Depp did, I thought was brilliant. I thought it was hilarious. I love that movie. So, and he's been in the news lately, as you all know, but I think that was probably my favorite non-trucking movie. What's your favorite truck that the Lettuce King has built? That is a tough question because he's built some beauts. He had the one he's got now is really nice, but he had a 379 that was that same color green with like a black mask that ran from the windshield across the top of the door and partway onto the bunk, and it was a factory paint job that he duplicated. And I really liked that truck. And he had a motorcycle that matched that paint job as well. And he was up here on his bike years ago with that paint job. I think that might be my favorite truck out of all the ones that he's built. And he sold that for huge money a lot of years ago now. But, God, that was a sharp-looking ride. Hello, Dave from hot and sunny Spokane. We are finally having some warm weather up here after a very wet spring, and you know what, Dark 688, I was thinking of your neck of the woods here just earlier today, because every once in a while, like this time of year, maybe in another few weeks, I would pull cherries out of Washington, and the loads paid really well. They weren't that heavy, and I love Washington cherries. So, and I was just thinking, man, I could sure go for some of those today. So I think I'm a little early. I think the season will hit shortly here, but love the cherries out of Washington State. SoCal says Saving Private Ryan was his favorite movie. You know what? I've never even seen that. I'll have to, and I hear it's excellent. I just never got around to it. I'll have to watch that one because a lot of people have told me that was an excellent movie. Trucker Hershey, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Man, that I remember seeing that when it first came out, and it was quite the show. It was ahead of its time. It was an amazing movie. What am I doing now? I'm just trying to keep up with all my chores, basically. I gotta run my truck up to the shop here and swap out the power divider in the next couple of weeks, because during a Shell commercial we drained the diffs, and I found a piece of my old power divider in the old oil, so and she's still running fine back and forth, but it makes me nervous to after I found that piece. So I've got to run up to the shop. I've got a new power divider. We've just got to get around to putting it in, and then maybe I can go joyriding a little more in the old Pete. Needs a good wash. Been sitting in the field all winter. How old do you have to be to lease a semi-truck? I'm 19, waiting to do interstate in Texas. Benji, my guess is that varies from state to state, and in Texas, I think you could probably do it now. I believe that's 18 in Texas, but I could be wrong. Some are 25, but with this new business with hiring the high school kids fresh out of high school, I think they've relaxed a lot of the regulations. So, do I like trucking in Texas? Yeah, I did like trucking in Texas. I passed through it more often than not, and my favorite restaurant on the whole interstate system was the Big Texan in Amarillo. I used to slide in there whenever I could, and then when I parked my reefer when my old Pete didn't pass the emissions regulations in California anymore, I wasn't quite done trucking, so I ran a lot of chemical tanker stuff in and out of Houston, and I enjoyed that too. I do like Texas. It's a huge state, It's amazing. You drive and drive and drive, and it seems like forever to get out of it. Very big state. Do I like Dave Dudley? Why should I know that name? It is ringing a bell. I can't quite place it. Well, who is Dave Dudley? You know?
Well, what do you mean, who is he? He sings trucking songs?
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yes, I like all trucking songs. And Kathy knew that. That one guy. I love Rathdrum, Idaho, right across the border from Spokane. Where was that? I used to lay over every once in a while in Post Falls, Idaho. I would do a delivery up there for another fella that I knew that owned his own carrier, and he would feed me Post Falls loads every once in a while. And then I would hover in Post Falls, Idaho, and wait for usually potatoes out of Oregon or something like that. It was about the only thing that my produce buyer could find in that neck of the woods. But I did that a few times. I like Idaho's pretty, and Coeur d'Alene and the lake up there. Beautiful state. Old Dominion driver here, 6 months in from driver training, but 23 years mechanical experience, so kind of a shoe-in. I love the tips you give on here. Good info. Well, thank you. I've never heard anything bad about Old Dominion. I heard they're a really well-run company, and when everybody else is in financial trouble, when the chips are down, Old Dominion they're so well run that you never have to worry about losing a job there, just because they're a sharp and well run carrier. Is Nick a trucker? No. Nick is not a trucker and has no desire to be, which is probably a good thing, because there's not much decent trucking left in Canada anymore. I'm currently in truck driving school. Is Melton a good carrier to work for? Yes, I've heard good things about Melton. They've been around for a while, and that's a good sign for a big trucking company. So yeah, I think Melton is just fine. I recently saw a YouTube video of Jerry Reed performing Eastbound and Down. Very cool. I like Jerry Reed. That's from SoCal. He was a character. He was a bit of a character. I used to deliver fuel to the Conoco stations in Rathdrum. Beautiful town and area. Sandpoint is my favorite area, though. God's country up there. Yes, it is. Beautiful country up there. I love anything with mountains and trees and water. That's being out in the woods. I like that. How often does tire pressure require an increase? I would check mine, Joe. I would check mine weekly, like with a gauge, but I would do like a thump test every chance I got. like every morning in the circle check, I would do a thump test. I would do one at the end of the day. And it's amazing if you keep on top of your tire pressures, how much longer they will last. So it's well worth doing. It only takes a couple minutes. I had a special tool for getting at the valve caps for the inside duals on the drives and on the trailer. Just like a little stick with a suction cup on the end, and to get the valve cap off so I could get in there. But it's well worth it to check the pressure with a gauge weekly. I'm going. SK fan says I'm going to see Smokey and the Bandit tomorrow night. Well, it's a good show if you've never seen it. It is kind of a tongue-in-cheek fun show. Shannon says, "Wait, he doesn't drive and he's always busting you." I know, Shannon. I've kind of clued into that myself. It's hard to get respect from your kids anymore, isn't it? Well, you know about that. You got kids, so. But yeah. Tell them to ease up on me, would you? I appreciate it. In your opinion, should I work for LTL companies if I am a future owner or operator? In other words, do you think LTL companies are mainly for people who don't plan on becoming owner operators? That's a really good question. LTL, some of the biggest, most successful carriers financially are the LTL carriers. And like Yellow, for instance, is even unionized. So if you want a good company driving job, I would certainly consider an LTL carrier. Like FedEx, UPS is unionized as well. There's, they have, the unions have their issues, but at the end of the day, if you're looking for a solid career and good money, the LTL carriers are a good choice. And there's plenty of them around. UPS is everywhere. FedEx is everywhere. Old Dominion, well scattered around the eastern seaboard. What's a better truck to drive? K-Whopper, Western Star, or Pete? I like them all. I like them all. I'd have a hard time choosing. I drove as a company truck. I drove a 1980 Western Star that I picked up right in the plant in Kelowna back in 1980, and it was a gorgeous truck. I love that truck. When I started buying trucks, but the first one I bought was a Kenworth, and then moved later on to Pete's when Kenworth dropped the noses. I didn't like the hoods, but they're all really nice trucks. These days, my understanding is that Kenworth is building the best quality trucks, has the best quality control out of any of the three of those. So, but Western Star, you can get the Detroit motors, and in my opinion, that's the best motor on the market right now. You can't get that in a Kenworth. You gotta go Cummins or PACCAR. So it kind of depends on what you want, and if you can get a Western Star with a Detroit, it's not a bad truck to have. I recently was bitten by a lot lizard in Idaho. Got 12 stitches. Oh my God. I can't even imagine the story behind that. My uncle drove for Prime. Now I see them everywhere. Yeah, Prime has gotten really big. I believe Prime has pulled all their lease operators out of California prior to this ruling. So it'll be interesting now to see how Prime reacts to this AB5 legislation, because, as I was saying, generally this will start to spread to other states, and Prime, the majority of their trucks, as I understand it, are lease operators. So it'll be interesting to see how Prime handles this new legislation. Tessa, what do you think of PACCAR engines? I like the PACCAR engines. The block and the engine itself is solid. They've had trouble with their sending units. They get a lot of false signals in their sending units. So I would, if I had a PACCAR engine, I would blank out as much of that stuff as I possibly could and do stuff like check the coolant and the oil regularly, so I wasn't relying on a sensor, because the sensor will fail and then shut the motor down. But the block and everything else is sound. I like the engines. Oh, SoCal says you got an in-frame done. Huh. I bet you that's not cheap anymore, SoCal. When I was looking at retiring, I looked at doing an in-frame on my Cat, and Cummins has always been more reasonable than Cat when it came to in-frames, but they were talking about $40,000 to in-frame my Cat. That was one of the reasons I decided to retire. I hope you didn't have to spend that, but I know it's not cheap.
47.
Sorry?
47, he said.
47. Wow. So, but you know what? You've had that truck a long time, and it's sure cheaper than a new one, and you know it's reliable. So it's not a bad investment if you know the truck. Not a bad investment. Probably the smartest investment. Smarter than buying a new one. What do I think about buying a truck for $20,000 or less, or lease dry vans? I'm not sure what kind of a truck you can get these days for $20,000. If you're going to get a $20,000 truck, I would want to be fairly mechanically inclined. So, and leasing dry vans, I don't think there's.
He didn't say that. He just said.
Or less for dry. Oh, I see. For less for dry vans. Yeah, if you're really mechanically sound and comfortable with doing your own work, yeah, and I would still keep it short to home, close to home. Tesla Lance, $40,000 for a rebuild. Yeah, SoCal said he spent 47, but it is not cheap. While the freight rate keeps going down and down and down in a lot of cases, the shop rates have continued to climb with the price, like everything else. I was talking to a buddy of mine here the other day, and he told me the shop rate at Peterbilt here is $185 an hour, and they've got like a half-hour minimum. You don't go in and get your fan belts adjusted and roll out of there in 15 minutes and get charged for 15 minutes. So it is not cheap to work on these things anymore. I used to shoot my tires and hubs with an infrared thermometer. Tires explode out at 300 degrees. I've seen those instant read thermometers. I've seen guys that hauled liquid chemicals. They would check the temperature of the load with those things. I've never had one. I've never used one. I think they're cool as hell. I imagine they're fairly reliable. I don't know. I don't think I'd want to be standing next to a tire at 300 degrees. That's for sure. I couldn't have told you that. When I would run across the bottom when it got really hot, I would park my truck, because you could literally see, down there in I-10, I-20, some days you could literally see the rubber peeling off the tires, and they do blow when they get too hot. That's an expensive proposition. Volvo older Pete's I saw the other day, Kenworth T6, and I saw an ex-Walmart International, 9,200 for 8 to 18K. Get underneath the things, have a good look, check everything. And if you see an ex-Walmart truck, chances are it's got the financial record, or the maintenance and mechanical records that go with the truck, because Walmart, for instance, will keep meticulous records. If you can find a used truck with a book, and I keep a book of mine of all the maintenance I've ever done to that truck, because the paperwork will show you what has or hasn't been done, and that's a real help if you're buying a used truck. And the other thing is too that you should be able to call the former owner and know whether he he's got no skin in the game anymore. He doesn't own the truck anymore, so he'll tell you if he was skimping on oil changes because he couldn't afford them and stuff like that. So have a real good look. It's a crapshoot to buy a used truck. It really is. So be careful. SoCal, my truck is so powerful now, runs so smoothly. I pulled a 37,000-pound load last night. Went up over the hill at 72 miles an hour. SoCal, and you had your own shop, like you did that right there with at your carrier shop because that's who you use. That's who did your motor? I'd be curious. Red Dog, have you heard of Heil Truck Lines? If so, what's your opinion of the company? Heil has been around for years. Heil is a family-owned, really well-run trucking company. They have my absolute respect, and I would not hesitate to recommend Heil. They were started by an older truck driver. They're still run by his family. Very good company. Jeff, what's up, Dave? I got back from a trip, saw 6 cab overs on the road in great condition. One was a beautiful K100 Kenworth. How's things been up in Canada? Things have been up okay here. Speaking of the Kenworth K100s, I watched some video today of the K200 that's in Australia right now, the cab overs. Are those ever good-looking trucks? No, I wish we could get those here. They're beautiful looking. I liked the cab overs. I did. Would I buy a new 389 Peterbilt if DEF rates were what they should be and no emissions? I would buy, if I were still in trucking and if I was in the market for a truck, I would buy a 389 glider and put an older style motor in it just to avoid the DEF altogether. That's what I would do. Little Ralphie says he saw a Kenworth 100 Aero cab in really good condition. I worked with a guy that had I think it was a 1984 K100 with the high bunk like BJ and the Bear, and it was long for a cab over. He had a 244 wheelbase. It was a beautiful truck, and he ended up moving to Arizona, and I haven't seen him since. But God, it was a nice truck. It was padded from the doghouse into the back of the bunk, and you could actually sleep a third person on the doghouse with his head up by the gear shift and his feet down into the bunk. Beautiful truck. Roadrunner Logistics. I found out to stay away from Ohio truck sales. I see a lot of guys doing YouTube videos on trucks they're buying out of Ohio truck sales, and that's just recently. And I'm not sure what the deal is with them, but I've seen some good reviews and some bad reviews, but they seem to be selling a lot of trucks. Jacob just started trucking 2 weeks ago. Any tips on alley docking and the first winter? For alley docking, try to line the thing up as straight as you can rather than before you hit the hole, rather than try to jackknife into the hole, and just creep it along. If it's an automatic, I was going to say ride the clutch, but you probably can't do that. But no, just get it as straight as you possibly can before you go in. Just creep, so you're watching both your mirrors all the time, and just make sure that you do it carefully. Winter driving, slow down. Just go slow. Leave a ton of room in front of the truck, so you got plenty of time to stop. Don't panic stop. Go slower into the corners. It's a whole different thing driving in the winter. But if you're careful, you'll get more and more comfortable with it as the years go by. Ms. Lady, good content on this channel. My friend told me when his truck is dirty, he doesn't get bothered by lot lizards. No DEF, no emissions, and rates were fair. I'm talking to you on an iPhone 13. Autocorrect sucks. What do you think about the hot shot business? Gooseneck flatbeds. I'm not a big hot shot fan. I know those guys rely on load boards in all sorts of cases, and I'm not a big fan of load brokers and load boards either. And some of those guys, they they're self-taught, so they don't know, what regulations they have to have for strapping down a load, or how new the straps have to be, that type of thing, whether the straps are labeled, weight axle allowances for different states. So it's kind of a rookie group experimenting with trucking without spending the money. So I'm not a big fan of hotshot trucking. Have I seen Hall or High Water?
Probably means hell. I didn't think it's funny.
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think I have seen that. What do you think about USA truck getting bought out by Schenker? That's a good question. Schenker is a very reputable freight forwarder from Germany, and they're huge. They have depots all across the United States. Reputable outfit. And I can understand why Schenker would want its own truck fleet. What I can't understand is if how carefully they checked out USA Truck, which is one of the worst carriers out there. So not that, I don't know so much about the equipment, but they're known for having some of the worst drivers in the industry. So I hope Schenker knows what they're doing. I do. Good question. What do you think of the Anteater Kenworth T800? Little Ralphie, Kenworth. All the manufacturers rate their own trucks, the trucks that they build. Kenworth rates their T8 as the best truck that they build, the highest caliber and quality of all their builds, the W9, the 990, the 680. Kenworth thinks that the T800 is their best truck, and they should know they built it. Chandler Cox, are you a real trucker? Yes, I am. Yes, I should say I was full-time over the road for 48 years. I'm pretty much retired now, but yes, I am a real trucker, not like a lot of these YouTube truckers.
The latest comment tells you what that is. Hell or High Water, a documentary.
Oh, it's Skyfan. Here's Hell or High Water. It's a documentary about a trucker named Don Wagner. He was a driver for Landstar, hauling a load of hunting apparel, drove for 33 hours, 1,600 miles, and got $450. No, I almost don't want to see it. It's there's the problem with working percentage, and that's how Landstar works its people. And Landstar, it has been around forever. They're a big carrier, but it's like everything else. It's just, you've got to be so careful. And Landstar, I've got some issues with Landstar too, because they say they've got agents across the country, but all they've really got are a bunch of load brokers in different cities that they do work with. So this guy has gotten this $450 load from a load broker, and gotten soaked on it. That's the kind of stuff that I do not like to see in trucking, and I wish that they would end it. I don't think that, I could go on about percentage pay too, but why do people love Caterpillar engines so much, Stray Cat? It's because they're so damn reliable. They use a little more fuel, but generally their shops, Cat's own shops, are top notch. You're never going back to a Cat shop and saying, it's not working right, you missed something. There's none of that. It's a hugely reliable company. It's a great engine for reliability, and Caterpillar would warranty their engines, their truck engines, longer than anybody else in the industry, and they stood by them. And you could go in there and plug it in, and they'd say, it looks like you might be having a head gasket issue. We're going to do that, and we're going to do the rest of the head gaskets while it's in here, just under warranty, free of charge, no problem. They were really good that way. Their shops stood behind their engines, and that was one of the best things about Caterpillar. Kelly Patterson, they probably got a bargain on USA Truck. I read the figure, and I was like, something like 34 million. So I hope they got just a canoe full of real estate in that deal. Oh, some of the funniest truck videos I've seen on Bonehead Truckers involve USA Trucks. I shouldn't say that, but it's true. Don Wagner was 66. His wife had heart problems, and they looked for a load for 2 days. Yeah, I feel bad. I feel bad for him too. And I think a guy like Don Wagner should be able to go back to Landstar and say, "This is what happened. I got soaked. You need to make this up to me somehow. Like I slide me, $500, $800 underneath the table. Make this fair. Make this right. I'm using your authority, your plates, your name. I found this load broker through you. Stand behind me. I think he should have a legitimate complaint there with Landstar. What do you think of trucking in the cattle industry? Do you think that's good money? Little Ralphie, I have never pulled cattle, except for when I was training 100 years ago. I ran with a friend of my dad's that hauled bull racks, and I found that I couldn't sleep at night because the loads rocked back and forth all the time. But I don't know how those guys do financially, so I'm really the wrong one to ask. I see some pretty fancy rides pulling cattle, but those guys work long and hard too. So perhaps they're making enough money to earn those fancy rides. They probably are. They've got my respect, those bull rack guys. One of my dash cam vids was on Bonehead Truckers today. Hey man, congratulations, 4-wheeler Friday. I got a 4-wheeler driving on the shoulder of I-70 in Missouri. That Bonehead Trucker channel always has lots of content, don't they? Never run out of footage. Tell us about the advantages of the compression release on the old 335 Cummins. Did you ever have one of those releasing compression while going down the road? No, I didn't. I never ran a 335. I've run an old 300 Cummins, but I never did run the. And that was a company truck. I was a company driver when I had that. I never did have one of the 335s, so I don't know. Some of those old motors were really good though. They were strong. You could literally rebuild them in a parking lot somewhere. They were a whole lot more simple, and I really liked that. When the water pumps went, it just meant that the pressure was lost when the pump went. So you could just take off the rad cap. The coolant would still be in that old motor, and it would still circulate around as the motor ran. So if you lost a water pump, for instance, you could drive the thing to the shop, and just took it easy on it. But advantages like that, you wouldn't want to try that stuff today. Oh, little Ralphie heard about the 56 immigrants in the truck in Texas. They found that truck. I got some questions about that. They found that truck in San Antonio, which is kind of like halfway between Laredo and Dallas. So my first question is, how did it get across the border in the first place? All the ports that I'm aware of, and I thought Laredo, I haven't crossed at Laredo, but I've been down there, and I thought they had radar imaging that would scan the trailers. That's pretty common in customs these days. So how did it get through the port of Laredo? Unless they must not have scanned it at all. And my next question is why? But the governor down there said that, customs is very short-handed and short-equipped and not as well financed as they should be. And I guess this truck has slipped through the cracks. And now I hear guys complaining that Texas is going to start checking trucks. But you know what? It's a slight inconvenience, and if it saves lives, I have no problem with that at all. That's been a horrendous thing. And if it means everybody gets pulled over and checked, if it prevents one more tragedy like that, it's worth the time. It's a terrible thing. Anthony, sorry, I just hopped on. AB5 fully active next week. I'm very concerned. That's I heard 7 days, Anthony, is the number that I've heard. Now, on the bright side, it's not like they're going to be checking you at the scales or anything like that. This is going to be something that the IRS will probably be the first to trip across a scenario like this when they do an audit situation on the carrier. So I think you've got some breathing room. I don't think the scales are going to give you any trouble, but you do need to make plans if you operate in or out of California at all. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal, and it's sad that it's going to cost like the little guy money too, and it will. David Thompson, been trucking as a company driver for 2 years, want to become an owner-operator. What's your opinion going straight into my own authority because of the AB5? David Thompson, I would get my own operating authority anyway, whether you plan to particularly use it or not. I would, hopefully you're not in California, but I would lease onto a carrier first and get experience at the carrier, because when you're operating with your own authority, you're footing all the bills. So if you screw up, you'd prefer that the carrier was there with their bankroll if you have a problem. And then when you've got lots of experience and figured out the industry and know how things work, then you could maybe look at operating on your own authority. And I made the best money running on my own authority, but there are good carriers out there that take on owner operators, and you can make a good, healthy wage and learn the tricks of the trade all at the same time. Ms. Lady says they say the cartel paid big money for the smuggling. Oh, I'm sure there's big money in it for those guys, but look at the cost. But the cartel has no conscience. They're just interested in the dollars. Just so upsetting. I watched this video from Asian Mai, and he said there are less owner-operators because of fuel prices. Yeah, little Ralphie, I gotta say, I imagine that's true. I know if, I own my own truck and trailer, and if I were working it right now, and the fuel prices were where they are right now, I'd have mine up against the fence, because it's hard to get the proper fuel surcharge out of a lot of these customers. They want to operate and run the loads as cheaply as possible, and why take the hit for your customer? That's crazy. It's bad business. So sometimes you're just smarter to put the truck against the fence, let the market settle, find out where things are going to be, what you need to charge for a fuel surcharge, and make sure you establish that that's what you're getting before you move the truck. It's a very, very difficult time right now for anyone that owns a truck, because the fuel prices are so goofy. And they say it's the fault of Putin. It's not at all. It's not. It's got nothing to do with Putin. But they always will have to blame somebody.
Sean's Classic Trucks.
Did you ever know someone with a movie truck or a truck that appears in a movie? Yeah, Sean, I know there was a small carrier here that had their truck star in a beer commercial. And I want to say it was a Molson's beer commercial, and it was a Locomote truck that starred in that beer commercial. And Locomote, to this day, they still keep really nice trucks. And what's his name? Tony Santos, I think. But he keeps sharp equipment. And I remember seeing one of his trucks in a Molson beer commercial. They're beautiful looking ride. That's the closest I know. Yeah, SoCal Sandman says Putin's a lame excuse. How dumb do they think that we are? Apparently they think we're pretty dumb. I was thinking about this AB5 too, and one of the crews that's going to be most drastically affected are the port drivers, because the ports are famous for using these lease operators. And if you've ever been into LA or Long Beach, you've seen some of these poor guys driving these old wrecks, and there's no air conditioning, and they wait for hours. And recently the EPA mandated that all these ports now have to meet the newest emissions equipment standards, which means that you've got to have electric trucks here soon to operate in and out of the ports. And when this AB5 now has come in, it means that they can't force these poor guys to buy $300,000 and $400,000 electric trucks. The ports themselves are going to have to buy these company trucks to meet these emissions mandates. And I think that's more than fair. They're the ones that are making all the money. These port drivers have been putting up with hell for years. So I think it's a good thing that they have to put the electric trucks in, pay their drivers like employees to make sure they get all their benefits and they're well paid and they're not living below minimum wage. I think it looks good on the ports. The ports are just screaming over this. But you know what? They've had this coming for a long time. It's time they paid their fair share to all those drivers. What is the worst state to truck through? In my opinion, I don't like anything with tight quarters. So anything up in the Northeast, I didn't particularly care for. I avoided the Northeast. Can I pick an absolute worst one? No, I don't know. Jersey, probably. If I had to pick one, I'd pick New Jersey. I hated going to New Jersey. My old carrier replaced his fleet of 2019 and 2020 Pete's with factory reconditioned 2006 ISX Cummins 600 horse at $40,000 each. No def, no check engine lights. Lee Harvey, I think that's a smart move. I think it's a really smart move, and he'll save himself just a ton of headaches. No, good. I'd do that all day long if I were a fleet owner. Good move. Yeah, SoCal's had that truck since 2005, almost 18 years. Yep. I've still got mine. It's an 04. I've still got mine, and it works just fine. John M says everyone hates New Jersey. I might be a little hard on New Jersey, but I hated going there. So anyway, I'm feeling good for the port drivers, as I said. I think that's a good idea. A good idea. You know, and there's something else I want to mention too here. For what I refer to as independents, guys with their own authority, their own truck, their own trailer, and you know, they can, and they're American. They got to be American truck drivers because we can't do it from up here in Canada. But if I was an American guy with my own authority, truck and trailer, I'd be heading to California in the next few weeks now, because there is just going to be a ton of freight now out there that can't be covered because of this lease operator mess. So I imagine a guy with his own authority truck and trailer can go in there and pretty much set his own rate, because there'll be way more freight than there are trucks as they try to balance things out. And I bet you there will be some serious money to be made trucking in and around California for the next little while. And if I was an American man and I was still working, that's where I'd be headed. Shannon says New Jersey, they're hard to understand too. Yes they are. Yeah, I never spent a whole lot of time talking to them, but yeah, they've got that accent going. Do I like BJ and the Bear? I like the truck. I know. The monkey works for Swift now. He's out of a job, so he's working at Swift dispatching. But did you ever notice that old BJ never hauled very much freight? Like, he would run all over the countryside all the time, but he never really hauled any freight. Adam Bennett, wow, thank you, sir. About time. Glad you're back. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad we're back. Leaving Denver to Minnesota, then Fargo, North Dakota, up into Kansas City, Missouri to celebrate the 4th. That's a nice ride too. That's all pretty country. It's good interstate. enjoy the drive. It's a lovely weekend for a drive. So thank you, Adam. That's a huge donation. Thank you. I appreciate it very much, and it's nice to be back chatting with you guys. I've missed it. I seriously have. Monkey SoCal monkey driving the truck. I liked when the old TV shows were on. I liked Moving On because I thought that was pretty realistic. But B.J. McKay just never struck me as too realistic. Yeah, SK Fan says I liked the truck but never cared for the show. Yeah, me too. Me too. Apparently that truck, some guy, I think he's up in Wisconsin, restored that truck, or Kentucky, I forget where. But they've restored that truck, and it looks, I've seen pictures of it at different truck shows, and it looks pretty darn sharp. Shannon says, no need to insult the monkey. I'm sorry. I guess I owe the monkey an apology. Shannon's right. Well, I know I get charged with animal cruelty now for insulting this monkey. Oh man, that hurt. I laughed so hard it hurt. The only problem with Jersey and the rotten apple was finding the way back out. Yeah, I was in New York City some, but not a whole lot. I never had to take a truck into Manhattan, thank God. The worst thing I ever did, I used to haul air freight in and out of JFK there for a couple years on and off, and that Cross Bronx Expressway just about beat the truck that I had to death at the time, and I didn't really care very much for any of that. So, and finding a safe place to park, there wasn't any. You had to get out into PA before you could find safe parking. Yeah, Muppet. Hey, man, how are you? The truck was the best thing about the show. Love the Aerodyne. Always grab your attention in BJ colors. Yeah, it was kind of a cool paint scheme, and it was a nice truck. It was a nice one at MAF show. Shannon's got to take off. Shannon, I'm glad you could join us, man. I missed chatting with you. I hope things out in Wyoming are good for you. Everything's well. Everybody in your family's doing okay. Thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon, I hope. Still laughing about the monkey crack. Manhattan deliveries. The trick was to cross the George Washington at 5 a.m. Yeah, I knew that trick because I knew we had to get in and out of New York, in the wee small hours of the morning. But God, there used to be an old TA at the Water Gap when you were on your way back out of there, and sometimes you could get a parking spot in there, and sometimes you couldn't. But I generally just kept going to get as far away from the place as I could. SK Fan, is Nick your only son? Yes. We have one son and one daughter, but Nick is the only son. On my way to do a pickup in International Falls, Minnesota. That's the closest I've been to Canada. Minnesota's an awful lot like Canada. Minnesota's a very, very pretty state. I don't know what goes on in Minneapolis, St. Paul these days. They seem to have lost their mind there, but the rest of the state is really nice. I want to go. I haven't been in Duluth in years, and I want to go up to Duluth and watch some of those 1,000-foot ore carriers go in and out of that port. I watch them on YouTube. I think they're cool as hell. Do you have any tips for food supplies for your truck to stay out of restaurants? Pack as much of your own food as you can, as much of it as you can that doesn't need refrigeration this time of year. Make it easier on yourself. And I used to make sub sandwiches, believe it or not. But if you got to eat the meat within a few days, and you can keep it in a regular ice cooler, you don't need a fridge. But Yeah, just anything. And my understanding is from my friends that are still running down there now that like all the good truck stop restaurants are pretty much gone. It's all fast food now, and I was never a big fast food fan. So yeah, you've got to do as much of your eating in the truck as you possibly can. I used to carry a barbecue with me, and I would barbecue. I had a box underneath my trailer, and I could whip out the barbecue at night and barbecue myself up a steak that I got at a grocery store going by or something. But yeah, you gotta cook your own food anymore. If you could find a decent truck stop that's open, you probably can't afford to eat there anyway. That's really changed. At night, we used to look forward to a good hot meal every night, and that is gone now. Dave, do you like Eastern Kentucky? I like Kentucky. We used to pass through Kentucky more than work within that state because we'd be on our way to Florida or something like that. But yeah, I like Kentucky, Tennessee. That's all pretty country. I like the rolling hills. Yes, so yes, I do. I'm thinking here, New Jersey may be the only one that I have a problem with. Although I have a hard time saying anything about Connecticut too. So. I think drivers should not have to pay for parking at truck stops. Richard, you raise an interesting point. Truck stops are all about making money. They've got a huge investment in real estate for truck parking. And they used to count on that truck parking so guys could land and come and eat in their restaurants and shop in their stores, and it was like a little village or a little mall. But now that the restaurants are gone, you can see their dilemma. And as much as I was against having to pay for parking, it was because for years we were so used to having free parking and this big beautiful truck stop to go into. I can see their point, and if I was just talking about the Eastern Seaboard, if I was out there, I would be willing to pay for parking just to keep the trucks safe at night. So it's a two-edged sword, Like, I can understand why they have to do it. I think you'll see more of it, and frankly, it's worth it to keep the trucks safe depending on where you are. And having said that, though, I think the states and the federal government should be pitching in one whole hell of a lot more to provide free parking for everyone, because there are way more trucks than there are parking spaces for them. And I don't think the states and the federal government have lived up to their end of providing free parking for truck drivers. I don't think they should put the onus on the truck stops. The truck stops are there to make money. It's a business. But, they've got these ELDs. They demand these hours of service. It's not always going to happen that you're right at a truck stop when you run out of hours. I think the federal and the state governments need to do a whole lot more. And I'm not talking about a 15 truck rest area. I'm talking about huge, well-lit, patrolled, safe parking. There's my rant on that. Muppet says truckers are the smartest people on the road. I'd like to think so. I might be a little prejudiced, Muppet, but I like to think so. Do I like Tony Justice and Johnny Cash? Not so much Tony Justice. Love Johnny Cash. I thought he was a legend. He was truly a legend. SoCal says, don't park at the end. You're probably talking about a rest area or it's Crunchola these days, yeah. And there's another problem. Because of all the poorly trained drivers now that are on the roads from these mega carriers, it's hard to find a parking spot where you won't get crunched by one of these guys. And I've done a couple of videos on finding safe parking spots in truck stops just because it's become a necessity. I've been hit in a truck stop. Just about everybody has, and who wants thousands of dollars worth of damage? I would nose into my parking spot, so if they hit me, they would hit the trailer at least rather than take out my rad. But it's a real problem now, and yep, I could go on and on about the parking situation. One of the drivers' top concerns this year is safe parking, and they're still doing lots of talk, and they've been talking about it since 2002. Haven't seen anything else anything else on it. They're just, nobody wants to spend the money. Why didn't you ever haul cattle for JBS or Cargill? I hauled lots of meat in my day, but it was all sliced, diced, and frozen by the time I picked it up, or hanging. I hauled hanging meat for years out of Alberta, but no, I never did haul the live stuff. Like I say, I couldn't sleep with the girls rocking and rolling all night. I was a light sleeper as it was, and that just finished me off. Same for the petrol in Ontario, California. Yeah, and they're not enough. They're out of real estate now. Those truck stops in Ontario. There's only so much real estate, and there's too many trucks in there. Rebirth, another greeting from Fayetteville, North Carolina. How are you, sir? Glad you could join us. Red Dog 70. I always go to the Loves. Never have a problem there. And that's good to know too. And Loves, where was it? There was a Loves in North Baltimore, Ohio on I-75 that I used to park at once in a while. And I could always get a good spot there, and I never felt that I was in danger of being hit at that Loves. It's just, the spots were a little wider. They were well located around the parking lot, and it was a good truck stop. I like Love truck stops. Obviously, they like us too. They've been using my name to do some free advertising for themselves. I don't know whether I'm going to do anything about that or not. My dad hauls cattle for JBS in Omaha and owns a Pete 389 and a Wilson trailer. I'm looking to get into livestock hauling. Logan, I'm going to ask you this question, because here's a question I don't know the answer to. And I have seen bull racks that I am sure are 53-foot bull racks with a fixed spread axle, the rear axle hard to the back of the trailer. Now, in California, the scales would give you grief for that trailer, but yet I know they run in and out of California. So is there an exemption for the bull racks to have the fixed axles for spreads for the 53s? I don't know the answer to that, and I would love to know the answer to that. So ask your dad. He'll probably know, and I'd love to hear what the deal is on those. Little Ralphie, I'm on the highway and just seen a 1955 Kenworth 523 bullnose. Bullnose. I've never seen a working bullnose. They have one at the I'm pretty sure at the museum in Walcott. There's a bullnose in there, and I've seen them at the Walcott Truck Show. But you don't see very many of those things at all around. They're a really rare truck. Man, to see one working, I would have loved to have seen that. Have I ever been hit by another truck in the truck stop? Yes, I have. Yes, I have, and it's one of the most irritating things that can happen to you. And woke me up, I can tell you, and I was some unhappy. So it's something that I wouldn't wish on anybody. I still get mad every time I think about it. It was years ago now, and I still get mad thinking about it. There's no excuse for it. Do they still ticket you for parking on the ramps? That's BS. That's from Alpha Driver. Some states do, and I think it is BS because you've got to be able to park at some point. The ELD is going to push you off the road, and if that's all that's available, that's what you've got to do. And yet some of these states will put you back onto the road when you're out of hours, and I think that's crap. Yeah, SoCal. I remember the Ontario TA truck stops. You had to show receipts that you had bought at least $15 to $20 worth of stuff to avoid the parking fees. Someone told me that that's changed now. You've got to you got to pay no matter what you buy. It used to be, yeah, and I remember you had to buy 15, 20, 25 bucks in the store. Or you had to buy like 100 or 200 gallons worth of fuel or something like that to cover your parking. Someone told me the other day that now you just pay, whether you're going to spend money in the store or on fuel or whatever. It doesn't matter. You're going to pay when you enter the parking lot now. I should watch the Rolling CB interviews. Those trucks are badass. Yeah, I do watch that. I'm a big fan of that guy. and he's done some interesting interviews and some beautiful trucks. So yeah, I do watch his videos. I've actually met him at Matt's one year. Hell of a nice guy too. Why are truck stop restaurants going away and being replaced with chains like Denny's and IHOP? My impression of that, Richard, is that they are having trouble hiring help. That's what I've heard, that they just can't get the staff to operate these restaurants successfully, and on top of the supply chain issues with getting all the food that they need. But that's what I've been told. Muppet says Chris does good interviews. DLS Trucking was a great one. He's done a lot of really good stuff. I like watching his stuff. I should do one with him. I'd love to do one with him. He hangs out in Florida, and I can't remember the last time I had my truck in Florida, and I won't have it ever again in Florida, which is too bad. But I would have loved to have done that with him. The Lettuce King, I think, intends to go down to Florida, and maybe Chris will catch him down there. I was surprised that he didn't go for the Chrome Shop Truck Show in Florida this year, but he might not have been ready in time. I don't know. Self-made. It's $25 now for parking in Ontario, is what he's talking there. Yeah, that's what I've heard. Tim Field, hey man, moved back to Cali just so now it's work for me. Tim, it's good to hear from you. Glad you signed on and said hi. That's a big move to Cali. I like California is a beautiful state. You can see why it attracted millions and millions of people that wanted to live there, because it's got everything. It's got deserts, it's got mountains, it's got beaches, it's got moderate climate year round. It's a beautiful state. Have you ever heard of that guy who has a trucking museum in Salina, Ohio? No, I haven't. I've heard him on Road Dog a few times. He brings old trucks to Walcott every year. SoCal, no, I haven't. Salina, Ohio. No, that's a new one for me. I'll have to dig around and see what I can find out about that. Little Ralphie, did you hear that Walmart is paying $100,000 for their drivers? I have heard them advertising that, and I heard that on Road Dog Radio, and that's pretty serious money. But you know what? That's more like where it should have been for the last number of years. So it's good to know that Walmart now has recognized that to get good drivers, they're going to have to pony up the money, because that's what it's all about. And I'm glad to see Walmart stepping up to the plate. And they're a good fleet, man. If you're going to be a company driver, Walmart should be seriously one of the ones you look at. But that's, there's more incentive, because they're paying their drivers what their drivers are worth, or almost what their drivers are worth. What's the story behind the Lettuce King nickname? We got talking about that some months ago, and even we had conflicting memories on how that went. Lettuce King told me it was because he scored a ball cap at one of the coolers in California that actually had Lettuce King written on the ball cap, and it was a brand of lettuce that was out at the time or something like that. But my memory of when we gave him that nickname, and it was actually Kathy that gave him the nickname, was when our daughter was little, we took her. We were in California with the Lettuce King, and we took her to Disneyland in California. And the Lettuce King, who likes to fool around, had these big floppy shoes, fluorescent green shorts, a pink muscle shirt, and a hat that he bought at Disneyland that was like the old Uncle Sam cap that was 3 feet tall above his head. And he put a towel around him like a cape and stood on the hood of his truck with his arms crossed, with the wind blowing in his hair. And Kathy nicknamed him the Lettuce King at that point. And it was funny as hell. I still remember that in Disneyland. But he said he bought a cap in Salinas too, and I don't even remember that part. But it was all part and parcel. And then he kind of adopted the green color that he paints his trucks, but actually he got that green color from the car that he inherited from his father, and it was that color green. So you can't blame that on lettuce. That was his dad's choice of green, and it's a nice color green. You should see this car he's got. It's unbelievable. It's on YouTube. Look under Supercharge.
It was on our community tab. There was a picture of
It was on our community tab, Kathy says. And it's also under Supercharge Cobra Jet Torino or something like that. It's a green car. You'll know it the moment you see it. Same color as his truck, but amazing car. It's got to be $200,000 wrapped up in that car. I live in California, just don't like the politicians. We've got that, yeah. That's from NPC David. Yeah, I think we've pretty much got that issue almost everywhere these days. Get in while you're young, like UPS. Yeah, that's good advice. There are guys that spend their entire career at those big LTL carriers like UPS, and they're unionized, and they make a good serious living for the entire time they're trucking. So too bad about the brown shorts you got to wear, but a good company and not going anywhere. My children always had me stop at the I-80 truck stop when we travel. We had so many pictures. We loved that place and good memories. Mrs. Lady, that is an awesome truck stop, and it has been an awesome truck stop for years. And the food is really good. There's not a bad thing to say about that place. And you've got to admire the Moon family for that truck stop and the other ones that they own, like Joplin and Elk Grove and stuff like that. An amazing chain of truck stops, great people, great services. Thank God for truck stops like that. It keeps the American truckers working and happy. There aren't enough of them. I don't like the scales in Vacaville, California. No, David, nobody likes the scales there. The trick, if you started down the hill, you could pretty much time it because they would open and close. You could pretty much see the whole road in front of you from the top of the hill if you were headed down into LA. So you could pretty much time when the scale was going to open and close. And I always had really good luck getting by that scale when they closed. Tim Field, all the scales in California are terrible. Same with all the truck stops. I forgot how bad this place was. Yeah, it's California. California's pretty heavily populated these days, I would imagine. It wasn't so much when I ran out there, but I was always, like I'd unload in L.A. usually, and then head up to Salinas to load. And there were, places like Paso Robles and places like that where you could stop and get a good meal and have a nap and stuff like that. But I think it's a pretty busy state now. SoCal, I just read your comment. I'm not going to read it, but I am laughing. Has the Lettuce King had a Freightliner or an International? No, but believe it or not, his first truck was a Mack. And he started out in the trucking industry doing dump truck work and bought his first truck was a Mack. And he drove that doing dump truck work with a Mack. And I don't know how long he did that. A couple of years anyway. And then he got the urge to hit the highway. You haul livestock because it's timeless. And that's how we get meat and leather. That's from Logan. Yeah, and that was what I liked about hauling meat years ago is you knew there was always going to be more of it to haul. And it was the same with produce. People got to eat. So if you haul food for a living, you're never going to be out of work. Very steady industry. People eat year round. Does the Lettuce King like Freightliners or Internationals? No. I can give that a one-word answer. No, he's strictly a Pete guy. He doesn't even like the Kenworths. He is strictly and solidly a Pete guy. And he had a bunch of reasons. I asked him that one time, but he likes Pete because the cab sits lower on the frame than a Kenworth, just mounted differently. Likes everything about the Pete's. Do I like the Happy Freightliner Coronado? I thought the Freightliner Coronado, I don't even think they make those anymore. I thought they were all right, but I don't see them now. I don't know if they still make them or not. And I even like the new the Cascadias, the new grill treatment on the new Cascadias. I think those are nice looking trucks. Does the Lettuce King like anything not Peterbilt? No, pretty much no. He's a diehard, dyed-in-the-wool Peterbilt fan. And I think part of the reason is he knows every nut and bolt on all of them. He can take them apart and put them back together with his eyes closed. So I think that's part of the reason he likes them. Lettuce King would probably be miffed at the question. So Cal, he'd almost be insulted, but he's his own character. I prefer my livestock on the Barbie, Lee Harvey. Me too. It's meat is all right to haul, especially if it's boxed. Like hanging meat could be a challenge. I didn't mind it, but you needed a special trailer to do it with racks in the roof. But I liked hauling the box meat, and years ago, back in the 80s, I hauled a lot of hanging meat, and it was rare to get a load of boxed meat back then. Everything was hanging. And I was coming through northern Ontario one time, and it twists and winds, and there's dips and dives and hills, and I had boxed meat. So I had about 44,000 pounds on the floor of the trailer, and the whole load, because meat's heavy, the whole load only came up to maybe my waist, and it was all boxed meat. And I caught another guy that I knew that hauled meat out of the same plant that I did, and he had hanging, and he was rocking and rolling through the curves, and it was, if you went too fast with that stuff on a curvy road, it was dangerous. It could tip the truck over. And I was making great time, and he was leaning back and forth, and finally I just went around him, and he thought I was the world's greatest driver because I could get around the corners without leaning the trailer over. And I never told him it was because I had boxed meat on the floor, but man, he didn't catch up to me for hours after that, and he thought I could really drive, but it was just all in the load. I never told him any different.
Okay, so just do a few more minutes.
Okay. Is the Kenworth W900 better than the 389? I've had both. I've liked both.
You have not had a 389.
No, I've had a Kathy corrects me. I've had a 379, and virtually the only difference is a slight variation in the hood. So yes, I stand corrected. I shouldn't have said that. I've had both, and there were things I liked about the W9 better, and there were things I liked about the 379 that I still have to this day. I don't have never tried a 389, never driven one, but there's not a whole lot of difference. But there were good and bad about both. My Pete was lighter to scale. I liked that. The Kenworth was so damn airtight that you could literally run the heater on low in the middle of winter, and it was so well built and so well insulated that would do it. In the Pete, you were running on a really cold day. You had the bunk heater on, you had the floor heat on medium. The Kenworths were warmer. So just a couple things right off the top of my head, but they're both really good trucks. Would I drive a greasy two-stroke Detroit again? Tesla Lance. No, that's a good question. I didn't care for their two-stroke motors so much. Like I like the 60 series engines that they do now. I still call them 60 series, but they're probably not even called that anymore. But I learned on a 318, a Detroit 318 was the first truck I ever drove with a 13-speed. Man, you just bang, 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 bang. You had to shift so fast. I was not a fan of those. I wouldn't buy one for myself. It leaked as much oil as it took on fuel, so didn't care for those old motors. Lisa Marie Coleman, $10. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Hi from West Sacramento, California. I missed the live streams. Lisa Marie, we did too, and it's really good to be back. And nice to hear from you in Sacramento. I don't know if that I spent a lot of time at the 76 in Sacramento. I don't even know if that's there anymore. I'm sure it's not a 76 if it is there anymore, but that was a good old truck stop and one of my favorites. But nice to hear from you in Sacramento. Thank you for the donation. Appreciate it. And as I say, it's nice to be back. SoCal saying bye to Ms. Lady, and oh, there she is. Goodbye, love you drivers. Thanks for all you drivers. Take care. Thank you, Ms. Lady. You take care, and appreciate you watching and staying with us. Thank you. What would the Lettuce King drive if the Peterbilts didn't exist?
He wouldn't drive.
Kathy says he probably wouldn't even drive. I think he'd probably go to the Kenworth because he loves trucking. I think he'd probably run a Kenworth. 76 is still there. This is Adam Bennett. Thanks, Adam. He's talking in Sacramento, like we just were. He says it's a real dump now, and I am sorry to hear that. That was back in the day. That was a really good truck stop. That's too bad. Huh. Yeah. Tim Field plucking on my heartstrings. W900A model, please. Tim Field, and Tim knows that is my favorite model truck of all time, of bar none, bar any of the Pete's or the other Kenworths. The 900A was my absolute favorite truck. The only thing I didn't like about it was it needed a football field to turn it around. The steering box was terrible in them, but beautiful trucks, and I wish I had one today. I do. What do I prefer, the 579 Pete or the Cascadia first generation? SK fan, you know what? I'm not really up on the newest trucks. I know our friends at GP Transco are having great luck with their Cascadias, and they research the hell out of their trucks for their fleet before they buy them, so they won't have wasted their time. And obviously the Cascadia is a real good truck. I've heard complaints about the 579 because there's an awful lot of plastic in the bunk, apparently, and guys don't like that. But I think there's plastic in all of them now. It just makes the truck lighter. That's what guys like about it. But tough call. That one guy. Take care, everyone. You take care too, sir. Thank you for joining us. Okay, well, we'll start to wind this one up here. Lisa Marie Coleman just got back from Truckee camping. That's pretty country up there. I used to cross Truckee at night, so the scale didn't bug me, but beautiful country. Well, thank you all for joining us. It's been so nice to talk to you all again. I've enjoyed it so much. Everybody needs to be careful out there. Take care. If you're in trucking right now, it's not an easy go, but honestly, it never really has been. So you've just got to kind of roll with the punches and be careful. Do your best. Take care. Keep the rubber side down. Thank you for the donations, people. And we'll see you on the back haul. Good night, everybody.